Saturday night emergency podcast. South Carolina lands two 4-star defensive prospects, twin brothers, Andrew and Aiden Harris, both commit to Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. It's the third time South Carolina has landed a set of twins, and we talk about whether or not it's the first time this program might be on pace for the best recruiting class in program history. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. And we have a very special emergency pod Saturday night. You can tell it's not a normal pod. I'm wearing a different shirt, different hat. It's on forward. What is going on? We've got a good episode for you with some great news on the recruiting trail. Before we get to it, want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It's a perfect time to join FanDuel if you haven't already, because right now, new customers will win $200 in free bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, let's head on over to Columbia, South Carolina. And a big recruiting weekend has just paying dividends right off the bat. It's the second big recruiting weekend of the summer for South Carolina. They had 9 official visitors on campus this week, as well as Shane Beamer's like football camp, where they have identified a ton of prospects, not just for 2026, but 2027 and 2028 as well. But the big news comes from 2 defensive players from the state of North Carolina, the twins, Aiden and Andrew Harris, who both committed to South Carolina tonight. Now, you were expecting hopefully at least one commitment, if not a couple, from this weekend, right? South Carolina has not gotten up to the best start with this year's class. Going into this weekend, they had the 55th ranked class in the country, only 5 commits so far going into the summer. But just like last year, and just like we've seen time and time again, this staff usually picks up steam in the summer and starts picking up players at a rapid pace. We saw it last year in June, July. You had, I believe it was 10 to 12 players, I want to say, that were all in a month span, but you had, I want to say 8 or so that were in a span of like 2 weeks in late June, early July. So that part is not different. What is different is the level of talent that you're bringing in general. And Aiden Harris and his twin brother, Andrew, that's a really big deal. I feel like I say that a lot, but this year, and we talked to Darren Ursher about this earlier in the offseason, this year, one of the coolest parts about watching a program really grow and develop, to becoming a more consistent and sustainable program in terms of being good year in and year out. It's great when you have good recruiting classes. One thing you'll start seeing from some of the better teams around the country is once you start stacking those recruiting classes, then you get these fun years where it's like, oh man, now you're just going out and getting freaks or positions of need, but also really elite, high ceiling guys that it's almost like just a shiny toy in addition to all the stuff that you needed in that year's class, if that makes sense. This class is very small in numbers right now. You only have 7 total players committed. Anyone around the program, especially for this year, but also next year as well. And you look at last year, especially from the receiver talent you had in state, it feels like, I wouldn't say a bumper crop of talent in state, but there are a lot of really good high-level blue-chip prospects that South Carolina is not just recruiting, but firmly in the mix for. And that's where it feels a little bit different than it has in years past. So you get Aiden and Andrew Harris, right? It's the third set of twins, by the way, that have ended up committing to South Carolina over the last 20-some years. Jasper and Casper Brinkley, back from that's when I was in college. That was the one that stood out to me the most. but two really, really good players. And when you talk about just from a what do they bring to the table? You have a defensive lineman that can play in a 3-4 or a 4-3 technique, and then you have a linebacker as well. Aiden obviously is a defensive line prospect, top 100 player nationally, the 11th best defensive lineman in this year's class, and the sixth ranked overall player in the state of North Carolina. North Carolina is a sneaky good state for recruiting too, especially in that Charlotte area. Then you have his brother, Andrew, not ranked as high. He's around like 300s nationally, but still a 4-star recruit with offers from all over the country, also being recruited by NC State, Auburn, several others as well. Getting both of them in the fold is big for a number of reasons, but it feels like it's the first domino that we might start to see, because both of these players are really, really good. But like I said, you've landed good talent. You've landed a lot of good defensive talent over the last several years as well, even when Muschamp was here. But the way this thing is starting to already pace itself, it feels like you could be in for a historical year. And I'm not saying that to wax poetic or be like, embellish or be like, some sort of sensationalism, like, oh my God, this is going to be the best class ever. But here are the facts of it. You went into this weekend with a 55th ranked class. Now, with just 2 commits, you moved up to number 39 in the country, which isn't great. That's not where they're going to end up. But you're 39th in the country with only seven total players committed. 5 of the 7 are composite 4-stars. That alone should make Carolina fans really excited, because as prideful as we can be about this program, and as good of a job as they've done over the years through numerous coaches in recruiting, you haven't landed like that's like either half or a little bit more than half the amount of 4- and 5-star prospects that South Carolina usually lands in a class. You look back last year and the year before, you landed a total of 9 blue chip players, 9 out of however many total you brought in each class. So probably roughly a little over a third were blue chip prospects. And that may not sound like a huge deal, but when you start talking about trying to actually compete for championships, that whole thing that Bud Elliott came up with a couple years ago that ended up being just like factually and statistically true, where no team has either competed or won a national championship that didn't have a top 20 blue chip ratio, which is or a top like over 50%, which is basically half the roster or more is a 4- or 5-star prospect. South Carolina has not had that. They have not had that, at least in the last decade. But to get off to this kind of start, where not only have you landed 5 4-star prospects, but you've done it 5 of your first 7 players, and then to think about the other kids that they are in the running for. Listen, you have 9 players that are taking their OV this weekend. 6 of them are 4-stars. You have 2 3-stars, and then you have one kid, Koski Barnes, who is an unranked prospect right now. And that gets me almost more excited than anybody, just because of the fact that if Beamer and Clayton White have seen something in that kid and he's not even ranked right now, just best believe he will be ranked by the end of the whole process for sure. But going back to having these 2 players, and again, one of the things this staff has done a better job of than almost anyone else in the SEC, especially. And like, I'm not saying it's throw shade at Muschamp. Muschamp is a great defensive coach, and he's a good recruiter. But like what this staff has done such an incredible job of in comparison to the last staff is you think about all the big name players they had. I mean, Jordan Birch came in from Hammond. You had like multiple 4- and 5-star guys, especially on defense, that either left or didn't really pan out the way you probably thought they would. This staff has shown an incredible ability to identify talent, whether it's 3, 4, and 5 stars, develop that talent. But now you have solidified your presence, I feel like, as a program enough that you can go into Washington, D.C., you can go into Virginia, you can go into Pennsylvania like you did last year, right? And go and compete with the biggest of big names from the Big Ten Conference. And also, while you're down here in the South, competing against Clemson, competing against Georgia, and going to get players of that caliber as well. When we come back, we're going to take a quick little break. But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the scouting report from these 2 players, where they kind of fit with the defense and the program, and then also who's next, because I this does very much feel like it's the first domino. And again, not that jumping from 55 to 39 is anything to write home about, but looking at 72% of your class so far, and it's a small sample size, what that is on pace to do, there's a case to be made here that this could end up being the best recruiting class in program history. And if South Carolina's already been able to have as much success with Beamer and staff without all those blue chip players, what happens when they start having as many or more as the other teams are going up against in the SEC and around the country? We'll talk about all that when we come back from break. Before we go to break, do you want to give one more quick shout out to our friends at FanDuel? Listen, I say it all the time. Now is as good a time as ever, probably the best time of any to sign up with our friends at FanDuel, because new customers can go to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if that bet wins, you will get $200 in bonus bets just from your first $5 bet. Listen, the NBA playoffs and the NBA finals are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Listen, you can also do some college baseball. They got a ton of action going on there. If you want to bet on the regional, if you want to put a parlay on the regional, if you want to bet individual games, it's all at your fingertips, and it's all at FanDuel.com. Make sure, if you have not signed up yet, you are new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to do so. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you will get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks in a very special recruiting commitment episode. All right, let's focus back in, because I feel like as soon as I started talking about it, I kind of expanded out away from just talking about the actual players themselves with the Harris twins. Now, what do you get in these two players? One, one is obviously ranked higher than the other, but to have two players that are both in the top 300 nationally, let's start with Aiden. Aiden is the more household name, and let's not sugarcoat this, okay? Like, you didn't go up against. How do I put this? So both of them were being recruited by Auburn and NC State and the teams like that. The teams you were competing with for Aiden, his other crystal ball predictions were Ohio State, right? He had 39 total offers, went on 3 visits. I'll pull up the offer list right now, and it's a who's who, right? Florida, obviously, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Kentucky, LSU, Miami, Michigan. Let's see here: Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Tennessee, Texas A&M. So you had a player that everybody in the country wanted. 39 offers is nothing to shake your head at. When you talk about the fact that, like, some of those names I just listed off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 playoff teams from a season ago. Obviously, Michigan, Miami, brand names like that, LSU. Getting this kid, and it's a kid that's in your backyard, but it's also not, and being able to kind of extend that fence that you have created around the program and making sure kids around Columbia and around the state of South Carolina know that they're a priority, because that's big. That's a big deal. And that's one of the things Darren Usher and company have done a really, really good job of, which is identifying, like, hey, man, like there's a lot of talent in the state. It gets overlooked a lot. There's a lot of talent that we want to prioritize and we want to go after. Welcome home. Coming on, like, what this specific staff or regime has done a better job of, maybe more than anything, is creating this, like, very real sense of pride, community, and, like, I don't want to say family because it's too hokey, but like something to be really, really committed to by coming to South Carolina. There's a reason why you didn't see a lot of kids leave, and they were working out all those NIL deals at the start of December last year. They announced all of it, like, and you don't see that at other schools where it's like every single player that gets an NIL deal with the collective making an announcement. Like, prioritizing these kids, making them feel wanted, making them feel valued, and going after, like, the kids in your own backyard before you expand out. It sounds like it's like a no-brainer, but there's a lot of lot of places that don't. Dabo Swinney wasn't doing it for a very long time. So that's one thing that I do like. The other thing is this. So when you talk about Aiden Harris in general, okay, this is the scouting report that 247 has. Broad shoulder defender with impressive snap anticipation, upfield charge, worth consideration, both a 3-4 end and a 4-3 interior defensive lineman. Listen, it plays a 3 technique primarily in his high school team. It does a good job of defeating double teams, which he gets double teamed a lot, obviously. His size, 6'4", 245. Obviously, he's going to put on some weight if he's going to play inside. I mean, you could probably – that's still light to be a three tech a DN and a 3-4. But, I mean, the kid's 17, right? So plenty of time to do that. His brother is a linebacker, and Andrew Harris, like I said, not as highly ranked, but still a top 300 player. One thing I like about this kid too, 6'2", 235. He'll play outside linebacker and edge, but 6'2", 235, you're already in a physically ready to come in and compete at that size. Now, like the height isn't super ideal necessarily, but you're I don't know what his arm length is, but you're ready to come in and compete like right away. Again, 36 offers nationally. Went on the same 3 visits. Some of the schools that offered him, same as his brother: Ohio State, Ole Miss, Penn State, Tennessee, Texas. A very, very prized and targeted recruit. Now, scouting report here. One of my favorite things about this is 6'2", 230 or 6'2", 235, right? Like he's going to play most likely off-ball linebacker or with his hand in the dirt coming off the edge. His sophomore year, he's one thing you see a lot now with recruiting, especially with like this day and age of kids, is specialized players, like players that only play one sport and they have all their focus going to that. It happens a lot with football and baseball. But one of the things that you're starting to hear from coaches more and more is they want to see more well-rounded kids, more well-rounded athletes, people that like one from a competitive standpoint that want to go out and compete, but also like that can do other things athletically and not just limited to like, the skill set and range of motions like that you would have only in football. This kid at 6'2", 235 competed in track and field shot put and then the 200 and also ran a 11.48 100-meter dash, which at that size, pretty damn impressive. I don't know if he's a kid that's going to come in on day one and compete right away, but the frame is there. And like I said, sometimes I get more excited almost about these like projects that South Carolina lands more than like the high profile kids, because the track record and the hit rate that this staff has had with those guys has been like, elite. That's like not a lot of misses there. So love all that. What it could mean moving forward. And again, I'm not saying this just to get like ahead of our skis, try to, sunshine pump or anything like that. I will go through all the recruiting classes probably tomorrow and we'll revisit this and we'll maybe sometime next week. And just do a quick little deep dive on it, because we've talked about this a lot before, which is in-state, usually no more than 6, a lot of times around 4 total blue chip prospects. That's what you're working with in your backyard. In South Carolina as a whole, over the last, they've been incredibly consistent, but that consistency has been 18 to 22 national ranking and usually around 10 to 11 in the SEC. Again, it's a long time until signing day. And nowadays you have to keep those kids, in the fold and committed for that long until they sign and then continue to recruit them after they get on campus so they don't hit into the portal. But it's impossible not to get excited about this, because if you only have 7 players and 5 of them are 4-stars, and then you talk about the crystal ball players that you have been like, I get the other elite prospects that you have also heard are being crystal ball to South Carolina. And I'm not just talking about Landon Duckworth. I'm talking about Carter Meadows, and I'm talking about like all these very elite forward 5-star recruits and top 100 players. Like that's another thing too, is 4 stars are 4 stars. That's great. But a top 100 recruit is a, usually, a little bit higher of a success rate in terms of their talent and production in college aligning with their actual ranking, not just star ranking, but like number ranking as a high school recruit. I mean, if you're the 119th ranked player versus 91st, sure, not that huge of a deal. But a 4-star that's not in the top 247 or not in the top 100 versus a 4-star that's in the top 100, yeah, obviously you're excited about that. And South Carolina has landed a few of those guys over the years. They didn't land any, I think, in 2024. They obviously did in 2023 with Harbor. They did last year with some of the receivers and some other guys. Josiah Thompson's one of them. Like, I forgot which year it was. There was one year where they didn't get a single one in the top 100, but usually land around 2 to 3. You already reached that number with your first 7 commits. And the people that you are also getting crystal balled and projected to land are not only elite talents, but you're talking about Landon Duckworth, who's not just a 4-star quarterback, but top 100, top 50 guy, and the number 1 dual threat quarterback in the country, right? What that does, not just like gives you an elite player, people want to go play with that guy. And building those relationships, there's a real possibility here. You've seen it a ton of times with Alabama. You've seen it with Ohio State. You've seen it sometimes with Texas. You've seen it with like A&M a couple years ago. I'm trying to think of who, like Georgia does a pretty good job of this. But you'll see it especially around like these like camp seasons and then the all-star games, like the high school All-American all-star games. Those players want to play with each other because, like iron sharpens iron, and they want to go play with the best of the best. There's a real scenario here and a real possibility that like this ends up becoming the most talented on paper high school recruiting class that South Carolina has ever landed. And if it trends that way and continues that way, I'm not saying you're going to end up with a Clowney and Gilmore and Lattimore and all those type players that are going to be elite and future first rounders and all that kind of stuff. What I am saying is if you sign 15 of them and 5 of them don't work out, wow, you still got 10 blue chip recruits that for the most part tend to perform pretty well and usually contribute a little bit earlier than other recruits as well. So there's just so many positives that come from this. I know all of it sounds like very, very like, yeah, duh. But it's something we haven't really seen before, or at least it's been a while since we have seen it at South Carolina. That is all for the Saturday Emergency Pod Show. Huge night. Great job from Darren Usher. Great job from Shane Beamer and company. And the weekend's not over either, guys. The weekend's not over. It'll wrap up tomorrow. We'll have some feedback and some insight about who felt what quotes from the players and recruits, where things stand between them and the staff, and if anyone else is also going to join in and commit to the 2026 class. So make sure you tune in for that tomorrow. And then also Sunday morning, make sure you're tuning in after you listen to this one. Maybe after you go to church or go get groceries or whatever. We'll have a special episode because of the groundbreaking and huge news that happened late Friday night about the House settlement deal with the NCAA, where the $20.5 million has now been officially agreed upon and is going to come into play this season starting July 1st. So a ton of news to get to. Got a ton of notes I wrote down about it to explain all of it, all the changes that are coming with it. It'll be a fascinating episode as we learn more and more about it. Until then, guys, y'all have a great rest of your Saturday night. Go Cox.